Well, Jason Butler, thank you so much for joining me today in the spoiler room here for talking about your film Purgatory Jack. Now, I was on the Sawdust City Fright Fest committee, full disclosure, and your film got chosen not just by me. We have a group of people that voted, and it got chose to show at our festival second weekend of October. So I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to talk to us.
No, my pleasure. Thanks so much. Was as usual happy to hear that a festival that we submitted to loved our work. It's always a good thing.
Yeah, we did. It was one that we talked about amongst ourselves, and I love films that go in interesting directions or take concepts that kind of turn it on their head a little bit. And with Purgatory Jack, this had all kinds of elements that I really enjoyed. If you wouldn't mind giving my listeners, those who may not be familiar with it, just a synopsis in your words about what Purgatory Jack's about.
Purgatory Jack. It's ambitious. I'd say it's a what you like to call a neo noir film. It's about a private detective in purgatory who tries to connect lost souls with other lost souls that they might discover when they land in purgatory. And we in our version of purgatory, the biggest sinners are suiciders. It's populated with that sort of those types of individuals, overdosers, and just had too much funners. The ones that are stuck there between heaven and hell. So in this particular instance, a recently overdosed pop star arrives in purgatory, and turns out she discovers that she might be able to reconnect with her mom, who killed herself 20 years earlier. And as the story goes, things aren't as simple as they seem. Twists and turns abounds.
Twisted turns abound, especially, yes. Neo noir, horror, fantasy. I mean, this thing bridges a number of genres, and that's what surprised me with it. I'm a big sucker for neo noir. I love the noir genre, the whole PI detective thing. I'm sure my role playing companions are tired of me of always picking a PI type character. But yeah, that's what I dug about it because you have horror, but you also work in that neo noir and fantasy. And what surprised me most, and I was curious, is how you came up with the world for Purgatory Jack, because the scope of your world, as well as rules and everything of how everything works in this, felt really thought out. Where did this all come from?
Thank you. Yes, we definitely took a lot of pride in sort of building a world so that when you were watching it, you really felt like there was stuff going on before and
Mhm.
after. And this was sort of like this little French fry size in this giant world of ours. So thank you so much for that. How did it come about? I mean, really, it was sort of like everything in evolution, where originally we wanted to just kind of do like yourself. We just love PI movies. We love
Mhm.
PI pulp novels. We love the films. We love the cool talking guys. In particular, we love The Long Goodbye, where Robert Altman sort of
Yes.
turns it on its
Mhm.
head, and it's all just wonderful, fun stuff. Usually embedded with rich, interesting characters,
Mhm.
and just a fun plot where you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on, and then usually it comes together in a way that you didn't imagine, yet is so cool. So I mean, starting with that, it was just sort of we wanted to do that. From there, it's the script becomes a sort of a product of what's around us, what's available, including budget,
Right.
and stuff like that. So doing a true throwback, where you really
Mhm.
had to go retro yourself, that's a big endeavor with the cars and the look and the feel, and that just so it's like, okay, well, that's a bit tricky, but what if we set it in a world where we can play with that ourselves
Mhm.
anachronistically and just populate with stuff that we think is retro cool or very different, but because of the world setting, it allows us to get away with sort of this irregularity of what you're seeing. And then from there, it kind of lights a fire in your imagination about the possibilities.
Yeah,
So that was sort of the world building part of it. We're like, okay, this is how we can get away with some of the stuff we want to do.
So you did come up with the world more so than your story, or did you have the story kind of thought out ahead of time and then built the world around it?
Well, our early days, we just got to sort of chatting with a writer friend of ours, and she's
Hmm.
like, "I really want to work with you guys. I'd love to write something for you." Da 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 da. And she's of indigenous descent, so
Oh,
we're like,
okay.
well, that's a very interesting concept because it allows us to go in places that Brett and I really have no right to go to ourselves because we're
Right.
not.
Sure.
And one of the big things, of course, news of the day was, Indigenous women going missing
Hmm.
and murdered and killed all the time, and no one seeming to follow up on it.
Right.
Couple that with sex workers and stuff. So that heavy subject matter was sort of what we were bantering around in combination with our noir intentions. She got very, you know, kind of famous and just didn't have time to deal with
Sure.
us little people.
Sure.
So
Sure.
so we're like, okay, well, we really like where this is going, but we can't just do it so on the nose. So
Right.
let's take it into sort of an allegory level
Hmm.
in a world that we like and love, which is music, and just sort of play with it, which is essentially what we did.
Right.
So that's how we transpose that idea, and then within Purgatory, it allowed us to sort of make twists and turns that might have been more difficult if it was set in the real world. Again, we like to get rid of phones and the ability to just
Sure.
solve things on your computer. That's certainly that's an easy shorthand. 5 minutes later, the movie's over.
Yeah.
So there. So yeah. So that's sort of the basis from there, that
Hmm.
framework. And we went way out with it. We had some crazy stuff, and then pulled it back in.
Yeah, you have some. I mean, it starts off a bit subdued. We're introduced to our character Jack Marlin, and who I loved. I loved the feel of Jack Marlin quite a bit. Definitely this PI gumshoe type just feel of this guy who's just trying to get through life, and he's kind of resolved himself a little bit to where he's at. Wants to do good, but he knows his sins. Plus, he's just like, yeah, he just takes life how it gives him. How'd you pick your Purgatory Jack? Because I mean, this is the title character. This is the guy.
Right. Um, yeah, I think basically, obviously, we're a Canadian production.
Mm.
And so at the root of it all, it's Canadian actors because that allows us to access, certain funding bodies and
Sure.
tax credits and stuff like that. So start right there. Then we knew we wanted somebody with a little texture, a little bit of, you could tell he's been through it a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, you're just kind of narrowing it down. And then it's sort of a matter of availability. Do they enjoy the material?
Sure.
And it's amazing how quickly that just sort of pyramids into just a few people. And then Tim was just amazing. We had watched him before. We knew what he was capable of from Winona Earp,
Hmm.
and also Schitt's Creek. So we knew he could do funny, and we knew he
Right.
could do cool. We knew he had just a really good aura about him in terms of his look and his face and grit. So we just contacted his agent and said, here, we think Tim's good for the part,
Sure.
and let us know what you think, and got back right away. And it's great because sometimes when you send it out to agents, you're not even sure if the actor's even going to actually get a chance to read it before
Right.
you get like a rejection, and you're like, whatever. But they both read it, they both loved it. Tim really, really got it. All he wants to do is do these kind of cool films and go to Comic Cons and meet fans. So that was so gratifying because it's sort of when Brett and I put these out there, there is a lot of humor that we mix in with
Sure.
sort of some messaging and some drama and some heart. That's kind of our little recipe, our little bouillabaisse that we like to open people up emotionally with some laughs and then gut punch them.
And then got
So
punch him.
so yeah, I mean that happened really quick. Once
Hmm.
once we realized that this is our shooting window, and these are the people,
Sure.
we just sort of zoned in on Tim, and thankfully our first choice, you know, was in,
Worked out.
and that
That's
makes
yeah.
things very simple.
Sure.
Uh, Yeah.
Well, especially I imagine that kind of helps to getting the other talent. If you can get someone who is fairly known and into the work as well, that probably helps pull in some other talent you may not already get. But I just loved his style and his approach to the Jack character. How not a huge amount of things seemed to phase him, and anytime
Right.
that true PI thing going, okay, he gets a little frustrated, but he gets a little concerned with our Vivacious, who I love the names of all these characters. It felt like a George Miller film, like a Mad Max type thing, to where all these characters have these like really cool and wild nicknames. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're making a movie. Let's have some fun here. So, for sure. Thanks for noticing. And again, with yeah, Jack Marlin, we just thought that was a cool name.
mhm.
Sounded great. And definitely the influence was obviously Elliot Gould from as Philip Marlowe from The Long Goodbye,
Right. Yep.
with the unfazed, you know, had is like, all right, take it easy. We'll get this sorted. What's the hurry?
Hmm.
And can take a punch, and so I think again, Tim, we gave him some touchstone films like that to watch,
Sure.
and he embraced it. Again, he got it. So
Hmm.
once it came to camera rolling, he just kind of, because we don't have time to rehearse or anything. We don't know
Right.
weeks in advance, what he's gonna do really. We're just trusting you to show up and be awesome. And
Uh,
again, you kind of hold your breath. It's kind of like a little faith. And it was wonderful. He says those first lines, and you're like, oh, it's just there. He's got it.
mhm.
He's got the rhythm. He's got the style. And you're in good hands, and it
You,
makes it so much easier to direct.
Yeah, it definitely got the gist of those pulp characters, and then you have your vivacious character, who I love the name by the way, Alexandra Beaton. How did you pick her? Because I mean, she's your other pretty much main principal character. Are these two that we're following? How did you find her?
Yeah, Alice was through a little more of an audition process, so
Hmm.
she, won the role,
Sure,
in the sense that, again, we knew the tricky part we always had in our mind, because it's just in the script, is that, she's got to be around that magic 27 age,
sure.
but her mom's also around that 27. Like, everyone's kind of got to be the same age, because sometimes you forget about that when it's just written. You know it,
Yeah.
and then you realize. One time we wrote a script where we had somebody in a wheelchair, and at some point we forgot they were in a wheelchair,
Oh no.
and they were doing things that were totally impossible. So we're like, oh my God, what have we done? So that was something we had to bear in
Sure.
mind. So again, it
Hmm.
was sort of, that one was more put it out to the agents. There was a lot of good options out there for us in terms of look and vibe and skill set. And it was sort of just whittle it down, and then different scenes, who's feeling it. And
Hmm.
again, we just like talking to her, on
Sure.
top of her performance and what she was bringing to it. And again, it was a departure for her. So we always like to
Hmm.
do a little bit of counter casting if we can. So she
Sure.
was coming off something that was definitely not badass. She was in a series as a dancer for 5 years. And I think she was up for something that was
Right.
refreshing and that would sort of stretch her chops a little bit. So we see that as sort of an entry point. So yeah, it was great. It was great. She's just a lovely, lovely person, and came to play.
And she did, and that's in true indie spirit. All the things you're saying, the one, yeah, we don't really have time for rehearsals or too many like table reads or anything. We just got to take this as we can. Will these two get along? We'll find out on set. Uh, and then, casting, finding actors who may want to do something different. Than
Mhm.
what they're normally doing. I find that actors, they seem to get into the role more when it's something they haven't had a chance to do a lot of. Uh,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
They're not on autopilot.
right.
And again, again, they're coming from a lot of times from a TV background
Hmm.
where there is a lot of sitting around, and we sort of we're up front, like we're banging these out, 15 to 20 pages a day.
Sure.
You guys are going to get to act. We're not going to, you know, not a lot of sitting around here. You won't be able to, read a lot of books. It's just, you hope that they're up for the challenge.
Sure.
Brett and I always kind of expect there's going to be, one lemon in the bunch, but we've been really lucky. You kind of prepare for that. You're like,
Sure.
we're going to have someone who's going to be tricky, and how we
Hmm.
going to handle that. But really, it really hasn't. Everyone sort of pulls in the same direction, sees that we're working hard and that we're not, money's not to
Right.
burn. So let's not waste their time. Let's give them what we got and let's get there quickly. So that's what happened.
What was your shoot schedule? How many days did
Uh,
you have?
17 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's that's pretty that's pretty short. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
the word we often get when we're going out for financing at the beginning of the process is, "That's ambitious, guys." And we're like, "Yeah, well, of course. Yes, thank you.
yeah,
We want to be ambitious. We want to stretch our dollars. We want to try stuff that we haven't tried before. Let's go for it."
it
And then it's the tricky part is convincing others that we can do it. We got this. You
yeah.
know, that's the wine and dine part of it all.
No, no, we've got it worked out. Really, we could do this.
We do, I swear. We can do this. And it's sort of even a lot of actors ask us, how, because they never work with sort of
Mhm.
a directing team. How's this going to work? And, we just say it's worked in the past with actors that seem to really like it. Ask them, but usually what happens is that, on every single scene, Brett and I will have, invariably one of us might have a better feel for what the cinematography
Mhm.
requires, and one of us will have a better, understanding of how to communicate to an actor. And each actor sort of responds to communication a different way or direction a different way. So, at any given moment, sort of one will address the actor, one will address sort of the scene itself, the production design or the cinematography, and it's almost like you're just sort of dividing and conquering things. So you get places quicker, right? Because
Sure.
we're in sync already.
Mhm.
Anything that we sort of disagree with, we like to disagree with behind the scenes before we go to camera.
Sure.
Maybe iron out that we're on the same page once we get there.
Sure. Brothers, right? Have a little slugfest, you're good to go, right? No, just
Yeah, that's
kidding.
right. Come in a couple bruises, people are like, oh geez, just don't. They're on their best behavior after that. They're like, oh, they're, they're in a mood.
Oh, I'm not sure about this scene. Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive that you did 17 days because of the sheer volume of practical effects that you have in here, which is I always appreciate. Whenever I see an indie film try to do as much practical as possible, I give them mad props because I was involved in, I was a script supervisor for a film, an anthology film, and I was there for the long nights of working with just one special effect of trying to get the blood right coming out of a neck of a severed
Yeah.
head. And
Yeah.
you've got severed limbs, you've got severed heads, you've got blood effects, and it's impressive. I mean, how are you able to pull all those special practical effects together?
Uh, a lot of it is preparation timing,
Hmm.
and I guess flagging what Brett and I call sort of world building moments where we got to tell the audience that this is
Sure.
actually what's happening. And we're like, okay, this is where we've got to do it. This is
Mhm.
where we've got to sort of, make our mark, pick those spots, then sort of target that, maybe allocate a little bit more budget or time to that,
Mhm.
and then still figure out a kind of a clever, cool way to do it. Because kind of what you're describing, we had a couple scenes like that where we have the bit where Jack cuts to demonstrate
Oh yeah.
to Liv,
Hmm.
like, hey, we're full of essentially like coffee ground type substance. We're not full of blood after 3 days. So that at first we talked to like a sort of a special effects department,
Sure.
and they were talking like, we'll wire something up here and it'll come up here and we'll put on the prosthetic here and they cut and we'll spurt, and we're like, that sounds like a problem. That sounds problematic. It sounds like we're not going to get anything else done that day.
Right.
And it's the resets, and so we're like,
Hmm.
there's got to be a clever way. And then Brett's wife Allie is a production designer, so she was like, yeah, we'll just figure out a coffee bag
Hmm.
trick here. And I was saying the same thing. I was like, Brett, we just have to angle the shot this way, and then if we cut something here and we shoot it, it'll actually be a really cool shot and will seem really good, and it's the price of a Ziploc bag and some Maxwell House. So let's go, and just stuff like that. So honestly, it's just planning.
Mhm.
and knowing where to sell the sizzle and how to sell the sizzle. And it's
Y-
been very gratifying because our previous movies we sort of are more just character stuff,
Sure.
not a lot of blood, not a lot
Mhm.
of limb severing and such. So it's a first foray. So you are trusting the experts on it a lot of the
Sure.
times. And then Brett and I would rely on our background of more grassroots filmmaking for being like, there's a better, cheaper, cooler way of doing this. I'm sure. So
Would
it's
you,
just
would,
finding that melting those two worlds together, which is fun, very fun.
we'll just reverse angle this and get a bag full of coffee grounds. It'll look cool with
Yeah,
some lighting, perfect shadows. There you go.
yeah.
Which,
Let's rely on the noir lighting. Let's use what we got here to our advantage. And it
which
worked. And guys like Tim, total pros. They just,
mhm.
he gets it. I think it was the second take. It was just
Nice.
first one. It was like it just dumped out. It was like whoa. It worked, but too well. And the second one is just right. So it's amazing. Those
Nice.
things. Yeah.
Well, and that helps you with your schedule when you're shooting 15, 20 pages a day.
Yeah, yeah. There's that sort of unwritten, understanding. Like we're talking three takes, guys, three, four
Yeah.
takes max. We start to feel like Stanley Kubrick after like take six. We're like, oh my god, we're nuts. We're just too hardcore on these people.
I love Jack's apartment too. Where'd you get all the clocks? You have an inordinate amount of clocks on the wall of this apartment. And I was
Right.
just looking, thinking of it logistically, because I watched the movie again last night, and I'm just looking at it logistically going, wow, their props guy must have went to like every thrift store in town.
Right. Yeah. We need clocks. No. So we sort of reap the rewards, I guess. Well, two things. One, again, Brett's wife, Allie Thompson, is our production
Mm,
designer, art director slash props, kind of
sure.
everything. I mean, it's all delegated once we're going to camera, but she's really all of that beforehand. And because of COVID, we
Mm,
knew we were shooting this. We just didn't know when.
right.
So we were kind of really just sitting on it for close to 3 years, where we
Wow.
knew we had a bunch of money,
Mhm.
but then things were shut down and everything was coming and going. So during that time, it's just part of her job is she's for lack of she's almost a professional hoarder. Like she's turned her love of hoarding into a job,
Sure.
right? So, skill set. So like she'll be out at for sourcing for another show
Sure.
and just have this running in the back of her mind the whole time, grabbing the clocks. If someone's dumped a bunch of dead arms, she grabs the dead arms. Mannequins, let's go. So it was getting our families were getting a little bit, what's going on, guys? I think we filled up our parents garage. She has a storage unit like just rented for her stuff. That was packed. Their place, every nook and cranny was packed with stuff. Her parents' place had like it was all over. So when it came to go time, we're just driving a cube van all over Greater Toronto, collecting this stuff like a macabre garbage collector. So so it
That's
was, yeah, again, it was like that the ability to sort of accumulate that stuff over time,
mhm.
even all the leather jackets, just grabbing them when
Oh
they
yeah.
popped up for, dirt cheap, or the big overalls, just waiting and attacking. So all credit to Allie for just accumulating that stuff and just having the wherewithal.
Yeah, the
So
production design of this film was really impressive. You have multiple locations. Each location seems to have its own bit of identity and a lot of props and things within them as well, from whether or not we go to Flo's bedroom slash HQ, which I was
right,
wondering, where'd you get those other props from? Her,
right.
her, her drawer full of items, so to speak, next to the bed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's amazing what you can find, especially we shot in North Bay, Ontario, which to the listeners, we're in Toronto, and in Ontario in Canada. And Ontario itself is a huge province.
Mm,
From
mhm.
east to west side of it, it's a 17-hour drive. We're a big province, and we're right at the bottom, right at Lake Ontario, and then you can go north, essentially to the North Pole if you
Sure.
wanted to. So, you get way up there. So North Bay is about 4 hours north of here. and it gets really cold. But what was really cool and why we wanted to shoot there was a an abandoned Cold War missile site.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so it was the place for NORAD back in the
Sure.
50s. Well, 50 missiles were ready to go, and they had the secret little
Hmm.
dugout in the sort of the mountain nearby where all the delegates and all the important people could hide if World War were to occur. So this is an abandoned missile site that this kind of very interesting cat bought as a playground for his son. So bit of a misfire on that, but for our fortune. So he has this, and he collects stuff. So
Mm.
he's always buying things. He bought a hardware store when it went out of business there. So one of those like old timey hardware stores,
Sure.
dark with jars of things, and that's where it all comes from. It's just old rusty. He'd buy it. He'd move it to one of the empty silos, and then he'd be like, "I got something somewhere." So Ali had the opportunity to sort of pick and choose from his collection of insane stuff where because there's not just 50
Yeah.
missile sort of launching
Hmm.
places. There was helicopter hangars. It was a huge former military base, and this guy's slowly filling it up with junk that he buys, and not by the box, not by the little garage sale box, by
Sure,
like the
sure,
entire store.
sure. I just,
Yeah.
I'm just, she opens the drawer full of items and she
Yeah.
plays with one, and I'm like, wow, the props department had to have fun time
Oh
picking
wow,
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica did a wonderful job with. Oh, we have some excellent BTS stuff of her, like just really kind of painting it and just making them very, very tactile.
Tactile and
So
unique.
yeah,
Each
yeah.
one was a little different too. So,
Each one was a little different, very, and now they're available. We just don't know how else to use them. We'd like to repurpose them, but that's leaning in a little bit of a dicey area. So there's very few occasions we can bring those out to play.
well, you could, but you might have some questions. There might be
Yeah,
questions.
exactly.
There may be some questions involved with those.
Exactly.
But yeah, I loved how each location kind of had its own identity. Now, did you shoot the whole thing then on that land? Because you have various locations of in various disrepair at
Right.
some points. So was it all on that abandoned site?
No, we did about 9 days there. So it
Mm,
kind of acted as almost a de facto stage studio for us, where it was a home base. And the different sort of missile silos were
mhm,
used for different purposes, and then we found some that were actually stages for different, like
mhm.
Flow and Plater's room. So we used different ones for different reasons there. But yeah, we did about 9 days there, and then the others were out and about in North Bay and North Bay sort of outskirts. It's a pretty gritty area. Again, that's why we like North Bay's got
Sure.
a lot of grit to it. So a
Like,
lot of rundown stuff and a lot of funky stuff. So again, we're looking for practical locations that don't take too much effort in getting them to the place we need them to be. So like
like,
a concrete place and a cool bar where we used the upstairs with Jack's and the downstairs was actually the bar that we doubled as the jazz bar.
oh, nice.
Yeah, so and that we were just up there earlier this summer to check on some stuff, and that place no longer exists. It's been
Oh.
all changed. Oh yeah, right. So the Purgatory Jack reality tour has been truncated a little bit there.
But that was a cool place too. It's a shame to see places like that disappear.
Yeah,
That have character and some history. What appeared to be history and like again, I was fascinated by your location choices. Your hospital of where apparently purgatory plastic surgery, and I shouldn't say plastic surgery, I should say body augmentation is like the thing.
right,
How'd you find that creepy hospital? Because you got hallways that are dirt. I'm like, oh my God, this thing just feels so grimy.
right. Yes, that was a real debacle too. It was actually a defunct school. I think
Mm,
a elementary. I want to say elementary school, maybe a high school, but was shut down. I think 5 years earlier.
mm. Okay.
It was actually used now. Some of the rooms were used as sort of an artist hub where they could store their gear and equipment and stuff like that. And we had heard about it. So once we got up there, we had someone show us around different places that, they read the script and think, oh, ugly, grimy. So we went there and we're like, yeah, this is perfect. Um, the debacle occurred when some of the crew thought they saw it and they're like, "Oh my God, this we're gonna die. This is asbestos and everything like that." And so we had
Sure.
to there was a little crew thing, mutiny there where they're like, "We can't go in there. It's not
Yeah.
healthy." And we actually had like even the city councilors in there saying, "No, like this is used all the time. We've
Sure.
checked it out. We've done the air purification. None of this is a problem, but still, they're like, I don't believe you. And then we hired people and they came in and said, it's fine. And they're like, well, of course they said that you hired them. We're like, well, what can we do? How do we get around this? It's fine. It's just really ugly looking. That's why we love it. That's why it's so cool. So yeah, but it was a really fun and creepy and grimy
Mhm.
place. And again, like that thing that Plater's hanging from in there,
Yeah.
that was just there.
Was it
And
really?
yeah, we don't even know what it was. We don't actually know what it was used for, but it was perfect for dangling a torso from, just how perfect, how appropriate. And it's so gratifying when you're filming and you're
Mhm.
like, I don't know how this film's going to turn out. I feel pretty good about it. And then you have these like moments of like validation that you're barking up the right tree where here it is. Here's this perfect thingy thing that's going to work great in the film. So it's a meant to be. We like to call it a meant to be scenario.
And the world that you paint, there's no question if somebody does identify what it is, it doesn't matter because the world you paint, this hodgepodge of a hospital that has just made up of pieces for taking people's pieces together, you buy into it. You're like, okay, if someone identifies that, oh, well, that's what I used for lifting an engine, doesn't matter. It still works because,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our purgatory sort of in our minds was always not just about the people and human souls. There was a purgatory of crappy cars. That's where Pintos go to die. That's where Edsels and Studebakers live, right? So that's where shitty washing machines land. So
yeah.
it's all the crap. It's the purgatory of crap as well. So yeah, and so you're just repurposing that stuff, just like the way they're repurposing all their limbs. So yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Just because it was used like this in the real world, we can use it like this here because the rules are different.
Now, when speaking of the rules being different, getting into the subject matter that you have, uh, you know, you're dealing a bit with theology and afterlife things. Are you careful with how you present things? So, because the way you presented here, it felt like, its own thing, but people could get what they want out of it, heaven or hell, whatever denomination or whatever they have. Was there some conscious thought when you were putting it together going, we don't want to necessarily lean or make a statement one religion or the other, so we're going to kind of come up with our own thing because you've got the flower thing, which I loved that idea. It was great, and just how people where they might go after being in purgatory for a while. How kind of what kind of choices did you make with that?
Yeah, I would say, well, Brett and I are by no means religious types. We,
Sure. Hmm.
didn't go to church, don't really follow that
Sure.
stuff. We're not
Hmm.
enthusiasts. I think overall, we just like the idea of a purgatory. It seems to sort of be pervasive in all religious cultures that there's a gray area and it's populated with people. Yeah.
Right.
So we sort of glommed onto that general idea where
Okay.
it's a waiting room,
Hmm.
and full of people that you're not so sure about. They're not terrible people, but
Right.
they're not good enough to
Hmm.
go up and enjoy a nice casual lifestyle. And I think once we sort of tied that into music and the 27 Club and
Sure.
all like there were so many deaths back in the day from musicians. Brian Jones was death by misadventure,
Right.
which he kind of had too many drugs and drowned in a pool, but it was ruled death by misadventure. Not quite a suicide,
Hmm.
but not exactly a glorious way to go out either. And John Bonham or Bon Scott, these guys who die in their vomit. So, where do they go? They're pretty good guys. They didn't mean to kill themselves, but they kind of did.
Right.
And sort of, so we wanted to play fast and loose with that. And
Mhm.
like you said, it was really just that waiting room area. We didn't want to offend anybody. And
Right.
I think
Hmm.
we wanted to avoid reading up on it too much, and then you
Hmm.
sort of, I think you get bogged down in the rules at a
Sure.
certain point. Well, if we're gonna sort of follow this line of thinking, then we'll need to do this,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you're trapping yourself. Well, why bother? Everyone gets the general idea. Yeah, let's keep it simple here.
But you still have rules, and that's what I like because um, when I see some other films that try to do world building, and even big Hollywood films, and I've mentioned a couple of them in my reviews, they seem to lose the idea that you need some kind of rule set of how things function in this world. You can't just, oh, we're doing this now. And it
Yeah,
felt like you had that here, and I appreciated that because when you do the fantasy worlds, I think some rules, and even horror films, you kind of need a rule set, even if you're not exposition dumping at it necessarily, but you need some kind of thing that the audience goes, "Oh, that's how this works." Because if it doesn't seem consistent, I think you take people out of it sometimes.
right. Yeah, absolutely, especially when it's so blatant. So you're like, wait a minute, you just cut off your own nose to spite your face. So
Yeah.
yes, you got to find that balance of having the rules, having the parameters, trying to
Hmm.
stay in them, making sure. So there's a lot of checks and balances, and then also the sort of dissemination of information. So it's not
Right.
just like a vomit at the beginning, and then they can't even remember. They just know that they listened to, you know, exposition.
Right. And
So
that's and
yeah, we try to sort of blend it as sort of a little bit of the overlay with the words, and then Jack would talk about it, and then other people would hint at it, and just sort of, and also allow the viewer to sort of, you know, kind of be in Viv's shoes as she
Mhm.
discovers the rules. So are the audience. So it was fun setting the rules, and some came and some went. In an early iteration, we had like a giant flies that would come and suck out your memories from the back of your neck. Uh, and it was sort of a byproduct of a solution because we started thinking about like how do we don't want the sort of purgatorians to know there's like a loophole to get out of
Right.
purgatory. So how do we do that? And we're like, they should just have their memories evaporated when something, and then you just end up. We're like, this is crazy. This is crazy on so many levels. I don't even know
Well,
how we're gonna shoot that. So
and then it doesn't quite work with your subplot with a couple of characters. I'm not spoiling it all, but I loved that subplot that comes up with our main characters and just how everything ends up kind of connecting together, the connective tissue that you have for that story. I was not expecting it to go to that place in a pleasant way. I was like,
right.
oh, we went here. And I think if you did that with the flies, that would kind of make that a little bit more challenging.
Right. Yeah, you're darn tootin' it would make it more challenging. That's why there's no flies.
That's why there's no
So
flies. But there's a
yeah, so I
katana.
mean, yeah, sometimes it is just stripping it back and getting it down to its essence. And what do you really need? What are the key sort of things in this? And I think the key point was that there's like that small amount of time where 3 days is,
Yeah.
you know, so 24 hours type of thing, and just keep that concept going, and just remind the viewer once in a while, but not too much because you don't want them thinking about it too
Too
much.
much. Right.
Because yeah, once you start thinking about it too much, once that veil of conceit is punctured too
Mhm.
much, uh, then you'll find holes in any story.
Yeah.
In Chinatown, you'd be like, wait a minute. So you got to have that suspension. So you don't want to push your luck too much.
Oh yeah, no, my buddies and I, we grew up with Star Wars. I mean, that's in our DNA. That was the very first film I ever saw. 2.5 years old, my parents took me to see Star Wars in our DNA. But let me tell you, him and I riff completely on Star Wars when we
Yeah,
watch it. We
yeah,
love it, but at the same time, we're like, yeah, if they only did this or pick the plot holes or whatnot, because like you
yeah,
said, yeah, if you think about it long enough, you could pick apart pretty much any film.
yeah.
um, and it's about the ride, I think, and you definitely have a ride here, and not just your vehicles. Though I have to ask, okay, you've got a wonderful gimmick in here with the rear projection, taking me
Right,
back to the old '50s movies.
right.
Later on, Boogie is driving a vehicle,
Cut
but
sideways. Yeah,
but
that's just yeah, that's just to mess with people.
I loved
Because
it.
why not? Yeah, yeah,
I'm watching it going, because I first time I watched it, I didn't quite catch because I was focusing on the action or whatnot, and this time I was kind of watching more things in that because I knew what was coming, and I'm looking, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like, that's going sideways.
yeah. Thank you for noticing. People notice and they think it's a mistake, even at the QC level, where
Sure,
the post production house will look at it and they flag it. They're like, it's going sideways. We're like, yes, it's
yeah.
going sideways because it's rear projection. It's fun and fantastical. And I mean, the real reason we did it was one, just because why not, but also because the van itself is so big
Hmm.
that you didn't have any of that fun rear projection perspective otherwise,
Right.
because you just had like the little windows in the back of the van and like a little bit on the sides. So we'd either have to like shrink the van so it was disproportional and made no sense as a shot, or let's do something different and give you like that sense of rear projection. And I think that is a shot of a Nigerian desert or something. So, let's have some fun here. Come on. So just throw in a little visual, craziness. Why not? I mean, the whole fact it's rear projection is you're reminding the viewer, and we're also homaging the fact that that's from the
Hmm.
50s and noir and the heyday, and that was an era that Jack Marlin grew up in. So
Right.
that's how we wanted to sort of indicate it, and then we wanted to take it up a notch because they're in purgatory. Even the rear projections, bongos.
And,
So,
and it's purgatory, so who knows? Maybe the vehicle drives sideways. You don't know. It's
exactly,
you know.
exactly. So yeah, it's just fun. We get that a lot. People, it's funny what people pick up on or what just sort of sticks with them. They're like, it's the sideways rear projection movie. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah.
Ah, Purgatory Jack,
But
sideways.
see, but it's a memorable moment, and when you see that or think of that, you think of the rest of the movie. So,
Yeah.
just like when you integrate music, for your music choices, I imagine part of it was budgetary, but some of this seems like original as well. How'd you get the music for this? Because I'm a big soundtrack guy, so I was listening to the music, and I just love the different styles of music and such you have in here.
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, we take a lot of pride in the music. Brett and I sort of, do it. We don't have a we're the music supervisors. We love music, as I mentioned. We try to celebrate Canadian artists as much as we can. We think there's a lot of great music up here that just seems to just stop at the border. Just, just kind of, I don't know what happens there. So we try to present it to a bigger audience,
Sure.
ideally, that can, say, "Hey, who's this? This is really cool." So we had struck up a bit of a deal with a company here that held the
Hmm.
publishing rights to a ton of artists, and it all started with the spoken word that Viv does at
Yes.
Lost
Yeah.
Souls, and that was, we didn't write that. That was from the song Weapons,
Hmm.
which is from Carol Pope and her band Rough Trade, back in the day, and their famous song is High School Confidential. I think
Yep.
that made it in the US.
Yeah, they
So
did. I think that made it down here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a bit of a gender bender. It's a really cool tune. Still gets a lot of airplay up here because of
Hmm.
CanCon. So we found that these really cool lyrics. So we reached out to Carol and we said, we'd like to use your lyrics, if that's cool, in a spoken word sense. And then we because we were doing that, we went through the publishing
Sure.
house and they said, well, if you do that, we'd like you to maybe use the song somewhere as well. We're like, all right, it's a cool tune. Maybe we'll put it in the end credits. So that's kind of where it started.
Mm,
And then we said, well, we're actually looking for about 10 songs. Again, we picked spots where we're like,
right.
these are where we want songs. There's going to be a montage moment. Let's have something. There's going to be a fight sequence. Let's do it. He said, yeah, can I help you with that? I'll pick some artists in your price range, and you can just pick and choose from there. So it was pretty fun for Brett and I. We got to listen to a ton of stuff, some of the stuff we'd never even heard of,
Sure.
and some of the stuff we're like, we could use this. Amazing. So so we have the three Rough Trade songs in there. We have, we have a band called Toronto in there that's named themselves after the city. And again, we did want to capture different eras and different styles of music to sort of represent the people and the population of Purgatory. Some have been there, for decades or for a millennia, and some just arrived. So some are going to have an affinity for punk rock. Some are going to have an affinity for, new wave or jazz. So we wanted to capture it all and just put it in this stew because again, it's sort of representative of the location of Purgatory.
Sure. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think it works well, I mean, music associated with films, I mean, that's, just a natural pairing. And, I think Tarantino said something about it, of how important it is, because the minute, if you've got a decent movie and you've got that song, they'll hear it on the radio and immediately think of your film.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. I mean that 100%. We'd love to be able to play in that sandbox that
Sure.
Tarantino does for songs. But yeah, there's so many great needle drop moments in the history of film, and sometimes, yeah, you have directors use that a song that's been used before so brilliantly. It is synonymous when you hear that song, you hear that
Mhm.
scene, and then someone else, you're like, what are you doing? You're like kind of usurping your own movie here because all I'm doing is while you play this is thinking how it was done better in this other movie. So, come on. I mean, there's a lot of songs out there. Let's,
There's a ton of music out there, and it was great that you're able to feature some artists that maybe didn't make it outside of Canada.
yeah,
And as you play fest in that, introduce people and make them go out and see. I know I searched a few for my time watching Clerks, with Kevin Smith and his music
yeah,
choices and his needle
yeah.
drops as well. And the needle drops in here I thought were very fitting. And yeah, I loved that spoken word and those lyrics of how Alexandra delivers them too. I'm like, wow, I almost like went like this,
Yeah. Right.
like,
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
when
Awesome.
she went up there and did the spoken word. So yeah, you do have a few action scenes in here. Did those take the longest? Especially, I mean, not a huge spoiler. Yes, folks, there's some action in here. Interesting fight scene, extensive fight scene. Was that one of your longer parts of your shoot, or how did that did that come together well, or?
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, because you're probably familiar, like you're dealing with union actors, so there's limitations about how much they can actually do. Then you're talking about stunt actors and
Right.
stunts and stunt coordination. So it did take a couple days to sort of, get all those beats down and uh, get it to where we needed it to be. And again, figure out a way to film it still, because if we filmed it like full action, we'd still be filming. So, it's again, you work with the professionals that do that and
Sure.
say, this is what we're thinking, this is how we want to shoot it, so that we can get it done. We knew enough like that, and then they actually did their own version. They're like, okay, and they did it with their actual stunt
Hmm.
people themselves and said,
Okay.
okay, this is how we're going to film it. And we're like, yeah, that looks pretty gnarly. Let's do that. So it was a bigger part of the day. And we actually it was shot a little bit oddly because Tim started feeling not so good.
Oh. Hmm.
And he's like, just, it was sort of just the tail end of the big pandemic. So to be safe, he
Right.
had to go and quarantine, and we had to hold our breath and sort of shoot out a sequence around it. But yeah, I mean, it worked out great. We were super fun with that. And again, we try to get as much on screen as possible, just and get the actors to, because all the actors always want to do this stuff. They're just
Right.
not allowed, you
Yeah.
know.
Your
So
insurance man is going, yeah, no. No,
Yeah, so
no.
I've never met an actor who's not into like being thrown overboard and gets throw punch. They love it, but they're just not allowed to do it. You know,
Yeah.
they're only allowed to do it up to a point. So we want to get to that point as much as possible. So and take advantage of that excitement that they get to be like tough guys and
Well,
run around.
well, you're dealing with weapons too. You had a katana in here.
Yeah. Well,
where'd that katana come from? Because that was wicked cool that Flo has.
yeah, I don't know where that got sourced actually. It just appeared on set one day. So I don't ask questions.
You're just a director going, "Hey, we could use that."
Yeah, that looks good. Good call, guys. Yeah. I think we just, we're just pulling from so many different things and we just want to
Sure.
put it all in there. We got her in that racing uniform. We saw a picture one time of someone in the 70s wearing that and the cutoff spot beside a Harley. And we're like, that's a vibe. That's a
That's a vibe.
style.
Yeah.
Now imagine that with a katana sword. So, and that's just kind of it. You're just kind of world building that way. And it's really fun when it all comes together and works out. And
Mhm.
I think, again, Allie and the props team that are building some of the things like is it a Boogie sort of, what do we call that thing? The skate blade, the skate
Oh
knuckles. I
yeah.
think we call
Mhm.
it the skate knuckles, right? Because it's a
Sure.
skate blade because he's a former hockey player
Right.
with brass knuckles attached to it. So, I mean, the guys had a lot of fun building these kind of creepy, decrepit, odd amalgams of weapons as well.
or or costumes as I think is it Platter who has the crotch skull?
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, we know why now, right? He's compensating a little too much there. Yeah. So poor Joel, when the first day on set, again, that was something where you read about it, like
Sure.
you read it in the
Mhm.
script, and it's something. And I think as an actor, Joel probably read it,
Yeah.
didn't think much about it, and then arrived on set and he's being fitted with this giant skull on his crotch. And of course, Brett and I got the call from the costumes, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we got a problem here. Joel's not feeling very comfortable." So we're like, "Yeah, okay." So yeah, I mean, it was just sort of we had to get him into the headspace about why it made sense, and then
Sure.
once he did, he loved it. In fact, he bought it from props afterward, because he loved it that much.
No, no,
So
no questions asked. Okay, Joel, you got
yeah, you
it.
got it. Yeah, no problem. It's yours. ten
I,
bucks, no problem.
I, ju-
So
I loved how the skull had a cage on it too. It wasn't just like a skull that was strapped. It had a cage on it, like it was going to bite someone or something. It
yeah,
was like
right.
this.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, they did such. I mean, the whole team, everybody on the crew really got into it, and it's sort of our
Mhm.
motto. Brett and I is always, let's see what you got. We can always pull it back. It's a lot harder
Mhm.
to sort of get people to push it out. So we're like, you go crazy, and then we'll say when, and
Mhm.
then that's enough. And a couple
And
times they're like, really, guys, this is okay, okay, this is the stuff of nightmares, but let's do it.
but that's important. I mean, you've got so much detail in the background and stuff too for your world building. The fact that you were able to do that with your production design, kind of get all these items so you could put them in the background. Because I think sometimes too, when you get films set in like an otherworldly thing or whatnot, they only have limited budgets, so the sets are sparse, and it doesn't quite feel like it's an actual world. It feels like a set. And in here, like when you get into the chop shop early on where they're draining the blood of the one guy. I'm like, there's stuff hanging everywhere. You got stuff in the background. It's like this feels like an actual chop shop for
Right,
body
right, yeah,
parts, right?
yeah, yeah, totally. So, I mean, like I said, I went into the story about Allie just collecting this stuff
Yeah.
over time, and I mean, it is it's so important to world building that one that we think about it, and
Hmm.
then two, you're able to execute it and sort of
Right.
have that depth, and that makes it fun for the cinematographer because he doesn't have to shoot around that boring space there that you just couldn't fill out. So then you get bigger shots. So it's just everything feeds into itself,
And
which is super fun.
you've got some wonderful shots in here. Being the noir guy, my favorite, I think one of my favorite shots is just a shot of Jack near the just before the title, where you've got Jack in his chair, you got the clocks, you got the music, you got the sun through the Venetian blinds. It's just like this whole feeling, this whole vibe is just like right there in that one scene just before you get the title. And I'm like, I loved that shot. I'm like, okay, we're in for something. So
Yeah, great. Yeah, we love that opening. We love filming it.
Mhm.
Tim was awesome doing it. Just the dance and then the cigarette work. Like it's just
The
what a
cigarette.
pro. So
Yeah, he does a finger flip. It's early on. Him and Viv are in a car. They're headed out, and she gets in the car, and he does just this like stereotypical PI like cigarette finger flip. It was so in character, but it was just. I know it's a little detail, but for me, I was like, I got a kick out of that. I'm like, that's.
Oh yeah, he just there's so many stylish like jaw dropper things he did on set. I don't know if you remember in the bar, he slides the drink down
Mhm.
a glass and it stops like just perfectly before it hits a pillar. Like just what? Like one time he just does it just perfect. Like he does so many little things. There was one bit where we're doing a special on you grabbing the keys
Mhm.
to go to the sweetheart room. He's like, all right, he's like, what's my frame? Da da da. And
Yeah.
he's like, I got this, guys. He does like again, like a little finger, it was perfect finger work.
Yeah.
And he was just coming off of he had just filmed Terror Train, where he's the David Copperfield, the magician.
Oh. Mhm.
So he was exceptionally nimble with his fingers at that point. He just seemed very in tune with his appendages, his digits. So all that stuff was, yeah. And those again are the touches
Mhm.
where it's we can't spend days having him learn how to do that.
Right.
Got to learn that in his spare time and just surprise us. But those elements really add to the characterization and to the whole vibe of the film. So
And it's definitely its own vibe, and I am happy that we're showing it at the festival. Very excited to show it to a larger crowd. I think they're going to dig it quite a bit. But what's next for you? What's coming up? You got anything in the hopper, or are you still just pushing out Purgatory Jack where you can?
Oh, no, we learned a long time ago, Mark, that's you got to have a lot of irons in the fire.
Sure.
What one the first time we were successful with film festivals, we just were like, this is it. We've made it. People are
Mhm.
going to come to us with great directing offers and great scripts to direct.
Sure.
It's going to be amazing, and that never happened.
Right.
All we ever learned was that the Q&As is like, what do you have next? What do you have next? So it's nothing to do with the film you watch. It's like, what do you got next?
Mhm.
So we do. We actually have one we just completed, which was a Canada Arts Council funded film called
Mm.
Thanks for the Room. Bit of a departure for us. It's about a courier at a COVID hotel. So I don't know if you
Oh.
guys had those down in your neck
I
of the
think a
woods.
couple places may have had those. Yeah, I know there were a few
Yeah, so
located
there
in
was quite a
towns.
few here. I mean, we're
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
4 million people, so there was a lot of them going around. We heard some stories,
Mhm.
so we thought it would be an interesting film to do. So we've got that going. We actually filmed one up in not as north as North Bay, Perry Sound, and it is set on the last day on Earth
Oh,
at a
cool.
hotel where a married couple has their 10th wedding anniversary that very same day as it happens. So they invite their entire wedding party back to
Sure.
celebrate. But their real motive is to find out what happened to the maid of honor who went missing on their
Oh,
wedding 10 days earlier.
neat.
And so this maid of honor is sort of haunting their
Mm.
subconscious, all the wedding party guests, because they have a little bit of a secret. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
was pretty fun to shoot.
Mhm.
Very cool experience. Great actors. One of the actors in it is actually the guy who plays Johnny from In a Violent Nature,
Mhm.
Rye Barrett. So
Nice.
yeah, so it's again, it's creepy, it's
Mhm.
fun, it's dark, it's weird. We think it hits all the notes that we like to hit, so to speak.
It actually that leads me to one thinking one final question. You have the theme in Purgatory Jack, and you had that, I think, in your previous film as well, the theme of suicide. Um, is that just a coincidence that that is, or is that a subject that you think, that you cover in a variety of different ways? I was just curious on that it seems to show up in a couple of your films, and so I was just wondering if that was by
That
choice or
that
just.
was not active. We kind
Mhm.
of realized that. We're like, I think we've done like a kind of a suicide trilogy, and it's not to be flippant about suicide. It's
Right.
just, certainly
Mhm.
something you know that is prevalent in our world
Sure.
today. That
Mhm.
it happens way too much.
Yeah.
So and it's a good way to uh, dial in an audience and to let them know that we're going to be tackling serious
Mhm.
subject matter. Not always necessarily in a serious way, but
Right.
we do take it seriously,
Mhm.
and it sort of permeates. But yeah, it wasn't active at first.
Oh.
Uh, we got to bring in our classic move, suicide. It just, you know,
No, I
it
was I
just, it
was
just,
yeah.
yeah, it just happened
Sure.
to make it made sense for the
Mhm.
story we wanted to tell.
And don't get me wrong, it's handled respectively, for sure. It just kind of caught me. I'm like, huh, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Welcome to the cop me. Yeah. We were like, what? Yeah. And you don't realize it sometimes. You're making the movies and you do think about your body of work
sure.
overall, but and the themes you want to hit. But suicide, yes, that particular thing, we don't actively be like, okay, here we go.
Well,
It just is appropriate. Yeah.
well, thank you very much, sir, for this. This has been a fun conversation. I love talking to filmmakers about hearing the stuff of what went into it, the creative process, especially when you get a creative film like Purgatory Jack. Is it showing at any other festivals coming up as well
Um,
that you're aware of?
yeah, but I'm trying to think now. So we were just in Romania at the Galactic Imaginarium,
Hmm.
and we're going to be down in Atlanta for the Atlanta Horror Film Festival soon.
And I think it just showed here in Wisconsin recently at the Port of Horror. Uh,
Oh, the Port of Fear. Yes,
Port
we
of
just
Fear,
made that
excuse me. Yeah,
fancy feature
yeah.
at the Port of Fear.
Mhm.
So we are you know, sort of petering out of our of the circuit right now. We're hoping for a theatrical release
Mm.
sometime maybe in the late fall. But yeah, it's I think really it's there. It's at Atlanta Horror. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, there was one more, but we're around. If everyone wants to follow us at Butler Bros on Instagram, BUTLRBROS, or at Purgatory Jack Movie on Instagram. We do update when we find out about new festivals, and some we can't announce yet. So,
Sure.
it's out there, and we want people to see it. We're super proud of our work, and we'd love for you to check it out. And we'd reach out anytime, and we'll hit you back. It's us. We don't have people working for us as social media. It's us.
It's just you. Well,
It's just us guys. Yeah.
still great work, and yeah, I'll be when your next project hits, and if I get a chance to see it, I'd love to have you back and talk to you about that film as well.
Sounds great, Mark. Yeah, for
You
sure. We'll
bet.
do.
So everyone, check it out. Come to the Sawdust City Fright Fest in the middle of Wisconsin. Oshkosh. We're talking the second weekend of October, the 11th and 12th. It's showing on Saturday, the 12th, but come for both days. We got 19 shorts and 3 features playing. 80% of it's coming from Wisconsin, just about, or 75%, I think I did a percentage. So support indie horror, support the Butler brothers, and yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll talk to you later.
All right.